Hello, my dear eaters. Hi, Rob. I am so excited to be back on another episode on our Food and Mood Talks on the series of Dancing with Desires. Today's topic is going to be around the ice cream cone that never melts. Like, once I was having this conversation with Rob, and then this phrase came up that he talked about the ice cream cone that never melts. And I was like, the cone never really does melt because it's like waffle wafer. The ice cream is what melts. But I love that perspective because we are an ice cream cone that never melts, right? Like there is so much that comes on and off and on and off, and fun flavors and sprinkles and chocolate chips and all of that. But what we really want to look at is beyond the flavors, beyond the ice creams, beyond the fears of eating the ice creams. What is that stays? That's always here. And we are going to be talking about different flavors, as in what that means for us, and what is like that anchor in life that makes us feel safe. And it's fine if the ice cream melts, we can just add more and not focus on just the thing that melts, right? Like, but beyond that. So this is going to be a fun conversation. Welcome, Rob. Welcome.
Sarah, good to be here. Uh, yeah, as we've talked a lot about desires and kind of enjoying desires, but as the talk or as the kind of title for this series is, it's going beyond desires and deeper than desires even, because these desires are this very earthly thing, right? It's our human experience to eat ice cream or have sex or read books or travel or have all of these experiences. But there is this eternal being that's deeper, or that's eternal beyond the experiences. And I think that's really life becomes I don't want to say in a sense easier, but it's like becomes more understandable when we realize our anchor, when we realize that we're not like I heard one time, like, things describe us but they can't define us.
Mhm.
Like, I'm described by what I do and how I dress and how I look and this and that, but that doesn't define me. It's like those rubber band balls. I don't know if you ever had one of those as a kid, but you got this little small rubber ball on the inside, and then you put all these rubber bands around it, and it becomes this big ball, and it's awesome. But like, those rubber bands don't define the ball. It's the little ball on the inside that gives the rubber bands the shape. And so it's like remembering that we're not the things that we eat, we're not the things we consume, we're not even holistically the body that we're in. Like, we are this ice cream cone that never melts, this eternal being that is taking a human experience and needs to play with this, not shy away from that, but also remembering, like, yeah, the uncertainty is safe, and it's
Yeah.
actually in this space that's we get the real cool shit.
Yeah, the uncertainty is safe. Let's pin that so we can come back to that later. But one thing that's coming up for me right now, I don't know how relevant it is, but I'm sure it's super relevant. But it's how I see a situation sometimes. Like, for example, recording a talk, right? Like, for me, this is one of my happiest moments. It feels like this is so much in my flow, something that I super love. And then other times when I'm feeling a bit like emotional or insecure, recording a talk becomes a threat to me. And then it's like, I don't want to record it. I hope it's being canceled. I hope that I get sick. I hope, all of these things to kind of like sabotage that. And then it's like very weird for me because I'm like, that was my zone of flow, of comfort, of joy. Why all of a sudden, based on one thought, like everything changes? Like it becomes a threat for me. And that dynamic really interests me because then it makes me see that whatever I think that I like or I dislike is so volatile in a second, it can change to the other side, even in relationships, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm so devoted to this. But then one thing can happen that pushes a button that it's like, oh, we just went there and then everything changes. So my perspective, my perception on life changes. And that shows me how, like, when I used to love strawberry ice cream, all of a sudden it becomes like the thing that makes me feel like nausea, right? And that dynamic for me is just very interesting because it makes me remember how much of a house of cards our life can be, or our perception. And at the same time, how strong and how rigid our patterns are, and like sabotaging something that we like. So yeah, that was like a super mixed ice cream sundae, but like it's just really interesting to see how these flavors, they change, you know, based on what we're feeling emotionally, how we're feeling like physiologically, who's around us. But the thought that really brings me peace when I'm thinking like something that I used to love now has become a threat is just like remembering that maybe it's not that, you know, maybe it's like my dynamic or the process of something that's going on internally right now is playing around with these things, like playing with the wires, you know?
Mm. Well, I think our greatest strengths are often our greatest weaknesses.
Mm.
When we find like there's in Greek, there's demons and daemons, and daemons are angels and demons are, fallen angels. But there's not really a difference in the two. There's a difference in the way the one manifests. But it's like two hands, like I have my left hand and my right hand. And if you only had a candle that were lighting these two up, you'd think they're separate because it's one's over here and one's over here. But if you zoom out and you see the whole picture, you see that there's one like man behind the two hands. And I think that's like where it's really important on a global scale that we make. And I think society is kind of starting to move in this direction with more of like a making more space for the feminine. Although I feel like a lot of like feminism is how can we get women in positions of power and like how can we put women in a masculine role? But where I see it really interesting, making space for the feminine, is exactly what you're talking about, where like it can be uncertain and you could feel this way one day and then feel this way another day. And one day this is a blessing and one day this is a threat, and that's okay. Like the masculine dominant way of society is everything has to be the same every day. It has to be rigid. You have to feel it. You cannot waver from that certainty because you need to go forward into the forest and there's no wavering allowed. But the feminine is this ocean, it's this dance, it's this, sometimes I'm this, sometimes I'm that, sometimes I'm full, sometimes I'm empty, sometimes I'm salty, sometimes I'm sweet, sometimes and that's okay too. Like that's part of this life. And for me, I think it's finding that dance between the two, almost in like that ice cream cone that never melts, like the masculine being the cone that's like supporting, and then the feminine being the ice cream that's changing and melting and satiating and desiring and then having both of those things dance and like I was just thinking about, like for me, I'm like fiercely loyal, but I'm quick to leave a situation.
Mm-hmm.
Which sounds like an oxymoron, but it's like if I'm here for you, if I'm in this situation with you, like I'm fully in it. But in the moment that it's no longer for me, I'm very quick to get out of it because it's not right for me anymore. But anyway.
And is that something that you worked on? Because like how we said, you know, our greatest weaknesses could be our greatest strength. So I think that until the moment that we're like, all right, this is being an obstacle in my life, and not in the thing itself, like not as in like the flavor, right? But in this dynamic, you know, this constant like going back, this pattern is an obstacle. And then working through that, then I feel like we can get light from both sides, right? Like our greatest weakness and our greatest strength, and having kind of like receptivity for that. And like you said about, you know, the feminine kind of, it's not the waves, it's like the full ocean, it's everything that's going on in there, and being okay with that. I feel like that is really the essence of the feminine, you know. It's like not being afraid of that and not micromanaging like why
Right,
is this
right. Being okay in the darkness,
here?
and I think that's where like there aren't really desire, like we don't necessarily have our creature comforts and desires in the darkness. Like the darkness is dark, there's a level of and if we're unwilling to go into that space, not that we have to live there all the time. I love being in the light, like I was walking around my house earlier and all the lights were off. I was like, oh nope, too dark, on, but some days I'm like, oh my gosh, all the lights are on. It's like off, 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 off. Like I just want to be in the darkness and give me a blanket and the sun stay behind the clouds and let me put a movie on and like nobody bother me. And both of those are part of it. You know, I think like the mind, like we were talking, you know, before we got on this call, like this idea of a like an anchor in an ocean that's like rooted on the bottom of the sea that's not moving, and then this string that comes up to the top to this buoy that's being like moved around, and some days it's more moved around because it's wavy and other days it's just kind of sitting still, but it's like up here moving around. And when we come into this life, we are birthed at the anchor. We're like this pure rooted soul being, and then we come in and we come up the rope, and like by the time we get conscious, we're now this buoy, and we're moving all, and life's moving us all around, and we get our we find our like our way of dealing with it. We develop our personality, we develop our comforts, we develop our safety mechanisms, we develop our ways of making life certain and safe, and all of these things, until I feel, you know, in my case, like life just kept poking me a few too many times where I was just like, oh, but like what else is there? Like is the surface of the water all there is? You know, I kind of got that like inclination. So then it's all right, back down the rope, you know, like let's go into this darkness, let's go into this depth, let's go into this place that's not really of activity, but is actually like more of just like responsiveness and allowing, and then sit in that for a minute. And then from that space, we can go back up the rope. But now we realize, hey, we're on this rope between like being in the earthly world on top of the water, in the sea of activity, doing the things, being the, you know, therapist or the doctor or the street sweeper or the coach or whatever we're doing, or the friend, or what, you know, sitting in the hammock, or, you know, and also then we're this super still being that's eternal, that's never changing, that's like always there. And you know, it's like we've talked about, like being the Joker is like we put the card on to play, we take a value to play the game. We have to. You can't, if you're playing a game of cards in the Joker's Wild, you can't play the Joker as a Joker. You have to say, hey, I'm playing this Joker as a two of diamonds, or I'm playing this Joker as a king, or I'm playing this Joker as a jack, or whatever. Then at the end of the hand, the Joker goes back into the deck and it's wild again. But in order to play the game, it has to pick a card. And so that's like the dance for us, is like once we become conscious, we think all we are is the card. And we have to learn and do the like inner journey to figure out, hey, wow, I'm actually the Joker. And because I want to play the game, I've got to pick a suit and number in order to do it. But that can change because I'm wild, and you know.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally. It's like I just got the image of like a little lion wearing like a hat of a cat, or like a puppy. And it's like, yeah, obviously, like when we're pretending to, you know, when we feel like we are that little costume, then nothing is going to feel right. There's nothing better about being a lion or being a puppy or being a cat. Like they're just different expressions in life. But it's, I feel like when we're in misalignment, you know, when we're just not really sure why we're doing something, that constant anxiety, I feel like that is the micromanaging, is that constant anxiety. You know, like when you were talking about, like, yeah, today you wanted to turn all the lights on, and other days like you just want to turn all the lights off and just watch a movie and all of this. This is one of my biggest struggles, because it feels to me that like whenever I want that, it's bad. You know, it's like I shouldn't be this, because I should always be very critical in my emotions, what's showing up, and I should have everything figured out. But that's a joke on me, because that makes me not accept myself, right? Like I just think that, no, I should already have this figured out. But the whole point is that I need to accept myself no matter what, because this is the dynamic of life. And by me kind of being flexible and open and kind of like, I would say even like nurturing, you know, kind of like having the kid play in that like PlayStation and being at the border, but not needing to like put the kid here and here and here. Like that's not the point, because that is interfering with life. But observing life and observing emotions, I think that is what that really changes, you know. And also you mentioned like you see the ice cream cone as like the masculine holding the feminine. That's a great analogy, but I see it as the ice cream cone that never melts, kind of like the non-dual reality of it all. And then the ice creams are just like different flavors. Sometimes it could be chocolate, sometimes it could be vanilla, whether it's masculine or feminine. We're just kind of playing with different like dynamics, right? And archetypes, and they're all really beneficial. But the moment that we think that we're purely that which melts, which obviously melts because ice cream always melts, it's ice, but then that there is something beyond that, I feel that the action of putting our attention there, that is what reinforces our safety and our knowing that it's not about that. Like I was watching this episode with Joe Dispenza where he talks about like to rewire, we need to ask the right questions. And this is super important, I'd say. When we ask the right questions, it's not about how can I prevent the ice cream from melting, right? But it's really about what do I need right now? Like making it very receptive to this present moment. And that practice, I feel that is what allows us to keep on reinforcing our roots in every single moment, regardless what's going on the outside.
Totally right. Like, you know, when you were just talking, I just wrote down, like, I'm still here. Like, I think we get afraid, and my mind builds up all of these things of, oh, if I say this, then this is going to happen. And I got to tell this person this thing that's going to be inconvenient and they're going to feel this way, or this could be, but like, regardless of what happens on the other side, I'm still here. There's like, even, and then if we take this to like a, you know, super esoteric level, like even when this body dies, I'm still here. Like Jesus talks about it in Christianity of you know, the Christ consciousness and the Christ surviving the death of the body. Buddhism talks about reincarnation, like all of the different, like the soul goes somewhere. Like we don't necessarily know what that something is, and that's where the anxiety comes in, that's where the fear comes in, like on a big level or on a small level, right? If I don't pass this test, I don't know what's on the other side of that. If I don't get this job, if I don't have this partner, if I do have this partner, or I do have this baby, or I do, like, we don't know what's on the other side of this thing. And that becomes really freaky and scary because it's the uncertainty. But if we can remember that there is just here with the T in front of it, and like, I'm still here. Okay. Like, because, and then when we like, by learning to just come back to this present moment, and like choosing it as much as we can, because we're always going to drift, but it's just like, okay, come back. Oh, I drifted, come back. I drifted, come back, you know, and not like, not to come back to be some certain way, like not to come back to the present moment so that you can be productive, but like to come back to the present moment so that you can fucking lay around and noodle all day if that's what you feel like doing. You know, like I think, right, it could get really co-opted into like, you've got to be present so you can be productive. And it's like, no, you got to be present so you can be present. Like, or actually, to put that a better way, you don't need to be present so you can be productive. You need to be present so you can be at peace.
Mm.
And sometimes that peace is like doing action, right? Like there are days when I lay around and just give into my desires and smoke all day and do nothing, and I don't feel at peace because I put off what I said I was going to do, and I was planning on having a productive day, and I got in my own way, and I didn't do it, and I don't feel at peace in those moments. But then there are other days where it's, hey, I'm like, today's like today, for example, this is my only meeting. This is my only call. I worked the last 6 days, and today I'm taking a day off. I took everything off my calendar, and I felt a little guilty about it. I was like, oh man, you know, but I should work. I should be productive. It's like, no, I worked 6 days in a row. I'm taking a day off. I'm resting. Took my dog to doggy daycare. My wife's at work. I got the whole house to myself. I'm just relaxing.
Yeah.
You know? And like, just, yeah, making space for that to be okay, you know, all of it, to go work, and that's okay, and to relax, and that's okay. It's just like this, right? This is the dance I feel for us. It's like life is inherently dualistic. and we go here and we go there, but it's like, what's behind, like what's the third way, what's the third thing? It's
Yeah,
like actually,
totally.
both, it's like I'm up, I'm down, but what's up, down, like what's like, yeah. And then it just becomes this, it becomes a game. It is a game. It's always been a game, like that, like we give purpose to our life. Like this whole idea of, oh, what's my purpose? Like, what's this, like, what am I here to do? Like, we'll figure that out when we're dead, I guess, or when we're done, or at the end of it. Like we look back, but it's like, what am I going to do? What do I feel is right now? Like, I don't know that there is some like big grand thing. It's just, I came here to play my part. I came here to, like for me, it's be kind. Like that's something that's important to me. It's like, I came here and I'm gonna be kind. What do? I don't know. I feel inclined to teach. I feel inclined to play. I feel inclined to have a bunch of different jobs and be a bit of a renaissance man. Like that's what feels natural to me. So that's how I'm approaching life. And it's not because somebody was like, hey, this is what you need to do. Although I do look to other people to like help me realize that what I'm doing is okay. Like even the topic of today of like the ice cream cone that never melts, that comes from a teaching from Ram Dass. And like, it was in seeing his story that I realized my story was okay, because I'd quit teaching and coaching and like left this like very high educated, wealthy lifestyle space to go and like explore myself and grow my hair out and be a hippie and get into all this like esoteric stuff. And like I was kind of for a minute thinking, oh man, I am out of my mind, I'm crazy, like what the hell am I doing? And then I read this story about Ram Dass, who's like psychoanalyst at Harvard and then got into mushrooms and left all that and went and sat with a guru in India. And I'm like, oh cool, okay, if he can do it, so can I. So it's important to like, for me, like see other examples, but also not let those other examples like dictate how I show up, but like just, I guess, reminding myself that it's okay to show up as I am. And for me, that's the like ice cream cone that never melts. It's just like, this is my nature. This is how, like, I can't tell you why I'm this way. I don't know. Like, it just is, and yeah, we live.
Yeah, and like now that you were saying about, like, so many things stood out like from what you were saying, but when you have, okay, now you want to give yourself the day off, and other days when you feel like you're procrastinating or just smoking all day and not doing anything, you don't feel peace. For me, my journey has been like, how can I feel peace in that? Because that is the ice cream cone that never melts. Whenever I think of like feeling peace means being productive, I put an expectation there, and I put a condition, and then that becomes the same mind fucking thing that goes on with, like the Joker, that it's like, okay, I'm writing my paper, I'm being super productive because this is for my master's, and I'm gonna submit it, and my teacher is gonna love me. And then I start feeling so much pressure, right? Like so much pressure on what am I going to write about? How am I going to structure my thoughts? And then that thing that I thought was going to give me peace because I'm being productive is anti-peace and anti-productive. So then I'm just like, again, always zooming out, like go beyond like what's going on, like what you think is going on, and see what happens if I fail this, what happens if I get kicked out of university, what happens if my parents stop loving me, what happens if all of these things, what is behind all of that. And I put it in a perspective, not like actually getting analytical with it, but because I know my tendency to always deal with issues that frighten me with stress, and that is being so counterproductive because I'm literally reinforcing the counter piece by not accepting what's going on. So for me right now, again, it's like, okay, I do understand I live in a society. I do understand we have certain roles to play and all of that. But when I get so stressed, it's because I forget that these things are very transitory, and there is something else that's asking for my attention. Maybe that means closing my computer. And that is one of the greatest statements for me right now. to realize that it doesn't matter. My life or death situation isn't reliant on this paper. You know, it's like, but there just seems to be so much like catastrophic thinking around what we think that we need to do. But like, so I'm more and more picturing the ice cream cone that never melts as like a gold ice cream cone, right? Like it's just made out of gold. And for me, silence is of gold, you know, like the thing that I can come back to whenever I'm feeling all of this like distraction and chaos and storm and validation on, yeah, you should feel guilty about yourself because you're not being productive. Like these are sentences and perspectives that are very much, I think, valued by society, right? Like it's, you need to be disciplined, you need to be this. But when realizing that, okay, beyond that, like there is silence, you know, beyond all the noise, there's always silence. And if silence is always there, then that just kind of puts things into perspective. Everything that I think is the end of me or that is just like completely freaky, there is always silence behind that. And that becomes this like where I want to put my attention, because I feel like that is the true like awakening of this moment, you know, of respecting the generous present moment without being in fear and without, you know, feeling completely disembodied and wanting to run away.
Mm. Right. It's sitting in it. And I think, right, like everything's helping us unfold. Like the catalyst that is like I feel pressure from having a baby on the way. That's led to me getting jobs as a bartender that haven't necessarily led to my peace in the moment, but like are teaching me about myself. I'm learning what I'm seeing, I'm seeing how I react to that. I'm like, there's a way, like, I think there's this, right? I think it's important that we kind of define this concept of peace, not so much as like external peace, but in terms of like everything out here is copacetic and there's no stress and there's no like conflict, because it's in conflict that we actually grow. Like, but it's this internal peace that accepts that conflict as it is, that doesn't try and avoid, you know, yeah, or deny it. It's just okay. Like whatever it is it is. Que
Acceptance.
sera, sera. You know, what will be, and I'm gonna do what I do. And like one of the things that's really helped me is this practice called fear setting, where we like, so like an example, like yesterday I had to go, I've got this new job at this bar, and it's a really awesome job. It's 16 minutes from home. It's great. Like the money's good, and I'm kind of getting sucked into it, you know, like I feel like I could just work there 5 nights a week and rock it and be good. But like my wife reminded me the other day, it's like, no, like the reason that I'm doing this is to have the space to be able to do my own coaching business and like have my own freedom. And I don't want to work for somebody else all the time and be reliant on that. And so yesterday I had to have a conversation with them that I need 3 weeks off this summer, 2 of them back to back in June, and I'm going to be gone for like 14 days. And, you know, I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if I'm going to have a job on the other side of that, what that conversation is going to go, how it is. And also I know it's going to be of great inconvenience to them. So I'm watching how in myself, like, I feel bad about it and I want to be kind and I don't want to put other people at inconvenience and I don't want it, but at the same time, I have to be kind to myself, and I'm taking those 3 weeks off so that I can go coach and do basketball stuff and make connections and build what I want to build. And so like before I had the conversation, I was feeling all of this anxiety around it. And I just sat down and I was like, okay, worst case scenario, they fire me. They tell me I can't come back after those weeks. I'm going anyway. Can I live with that? You know, like, I guess worst case scenario would be they tell me that I can't go, but I'm going. So that one's off the table. Second worst case scenario is I don't have a job when I get back. Can I live with that one? Yep, I'll be okay. I'll find another bar, or like the money's good enough from these couple weeks, I can last for a month or two. Like, so then it's, oh, what the hell? All right, let me go have the conversation. And with the full anxiousness the whole time, you know, when I went up and talked to the guy and told him like, I'm still feeling that same, you know, fear and anxiety around having this conversation. But it's like, all right, this conversation's happening because this is what we got. This is what it is.
Mm.
Uh, so
Yeah, and like I like the fear setting, and also so I work with internal family systems therapy, and it's like just kind of like looking at our psyche as a system, right? So it's a systems model. And what I love about this, it's a constraint release model. So we're looking, oh, so it's very interesting. I think it's a good analogy as well. So like we're looking at there are different elements in this framework. It's we have the self, which is kind of like that ice cream cone that never melts, and that is present all the time, and it's connected to whatever greater power that we believe in or we don't believe in, but it's just beyond like the little I, right? And then our personality is created by a bunch of different parts, and these parts all started to get burdens because of ideas that were interjected, or like past hurts and challenges and everything that goes on. But what I love about this is that we don't need to fix anything. It's about kind of like dissolving the burdens of each of these parts, and for that to happen we need to get to know them, and to get to know them it can be a lot of chaos, but knowing that there is a self that can cater to all of this is the fundamental um sort of like philosophy behind internal family systems therapy. Otherwise it would just be a bunch of like little hurt kids running around our system, right? So there is this self that has all of these they're called the 8 C's: calm, creative, connected, compassionate, confident, clarity, courageous, and curiosity. So when these qualities are present, that shows us that we are in our self energy. And when we cannot relate to these qualities, it's because we're probably not in our self energy. But again, it's just a reframe. It's like a shifting our gaze. It's an unblending from our parts, detaching from all of these noises that are showing up. And then remembering that, yes, there is an energy here that can support all of this. And like a couple of days ago, I was noticing like myself getting anxious. Tomorrow I had a client that I'm struggling a little bit with. What do I do? How can I take the right path? What do I need to learn from this? And then like my internal system was chaos, because it really wasn't about the client. It's about my insecurities around like what's showing up. And then all of these different voices start, like it feels like it's starting to eat at me, like it's just like kind of drowning me, but it's not the real self me, it's just like a little battle that's going on inside. And then just asking the question, what is it about this session that I feel is going to make me feel empowered? And like my parts were just like, we need to be prepared. I was like, okay, what does prepared mean? Prepared means meditate 20 minutes before and do all your client notes. And in that moment, when I realized that, I swear to God, my body just felt like I had a discharge. Like it just felt like, this is it. That's it. This is what it means to be prepared for me in this moment, right now, with this client, right now. Nothing else. And just having that clarity, like it just made everything kind of fall into place. And then that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm putting my alarm at this time, and this is what we're going to do. And it just changes the whole dynamic. It's just like being able to care for ourselves and our parts.
yeah, and I think that like one question I ask myself all the time is like, what is enough?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like our society is so caught on this, like, how much more can I get? And it's like, no, like, what is enough? Like, that's what you need to know, because there's always going to be more. There's always going to be other flavors, more sprinkles, more chocolate, more sauce, more decadence, more. There's always more. That's like where desires trap us, is like, there's always more. But it's like, okay, what is enough? Like, if I get one day a week where I can have full silence and no one's home, like, cool, like that's enough for me. Would I like maybe to have every day? Sure. I mean, I think I'd get bored of it, but like then that wouldn't be enough in the other aspects of my life, of like working and playing a role in society and being who I am. And so it's finding these like, yeah, it's like for you, like with seeing these clients, it's, oh, there's all these things I have to do. Okay, but what's enough? Like, what's my floor? Like, what's my, like, what's going to make me feel empowered? Like, what's the like one or two or three like simple things that is enough? Like yesterday, I wrote down this whole list of things I needed to do during the day, and I wanted to go get some work done. And it's like, I went and I did three things. Did three things yesterday. I had a list of like seven, but I did three. And that was enough for me. Because that's what I said in the morning. I said, okay, like these three things, I know I have all these things on the list, but like these three things are the most important. If I get these done, that's a win for the day. I got those three things done. Great. Like, I think, like I saw the other day online that like, I think people think consistency is like 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, 100% every day. It's like, no, consistency is 100, 40, 10, 60, 70, 50, 30. It's just showing up. It's being there. It's doing one thing every day is consistent. Then go back to bed. If you need to go back to bed, go back to bed, you know, wake up, pray, go back to sleep. Cool. You were consistent. You did one thing today. You know, it's like, and sometimes that's as little as breathing. Hey, I kept myself alive today. You know, like if you think about like in the, you know, not to get too basic with it, but like back in the day, if we're living out in the, or like some people still live out in the forest and tribal and the whole thing, like keep yourself alive for the day, like that's a major fucking accomplishment.
Wow, that is
Like,
so true.
you
That
know,
is true.
like how many people walk through the world and like think they were a failure, but like they kept themselves alive. Like you made it another day. Like, wow, what an accomplishment.
That is so true. Like that is a big reframe, right? Because yeah, even though like we're comparing to like past civilizations, but it's all a perspective, right? And like now we're trying to keep ourselves alive in the ego sense of like, how can I be like someone important or someone that matters in this life? And yeah, there's obviously huge exploration there. But what is enough? I think that what I really love about the statement is it makes us not like, so I feel that whenever I have a billion different tasks written on a paper, it's because I'm having a trauma response to something. You know, it's like I need to validate myself. I'm not feeling okay. Maybe I'm feeling like I don't have enough structure in my day and I need to put all of these different tasks. But if I actually like critically look at all of that stuff, it's not that important, right? And it's like, it's not going to help me because I'm coming from a place of fear and I'm coming from a place of not enoughness. But when we say, like, what is enough, that I think that kind of brings us back into like, not a pedestal, but like back into our seat, you know, like our seat of consciousness, our seat of we don't need to be running away, because another way of running away is with work. Another interesting way of running away is with shame and guilt, right? About not working. And that's so interesting because it's just the other side of the spectrum. And that's realizing, okay, so it's not really the work. Like the work here isn't what's important. My lesson here is how can I kind of like we talked about the one of the past episodes of like the cupped hands, right? Like not possessing and not completely like letting go, but like being here, you know, like you're saying, like coming back to this present moment. Like that is the importance, because that is where the practice is of showing up to life and being consistent. When we're thinking that being consistent means the length of time that we're doing something, immediately we're looking at the ice cream that melts. It's going to be changing. Like we're measuring results of like something that's not really as important. It's just symbolic of like, how can we train ourselves to be like proper warriors in ways of showing up to life, right? And not checking out with different emotions or whatever behaviors.
Right. Totally. Right. Pay attention to the process instead of the results. Although the results are feedback, right? Like the results are data that inform the process going forward in both ways, you know. Like it's funny, like you know, like yesterday I was very intentional after I had that conversation. I called my wife and I was like, hey, like I need to talk about what just happened, how I felt and what the result was, because I want to like codify this in that it was okay. Like I felt unsafe sharing what my needs were because it was going to inconvenience the other person, and I can trace that back to childhood stuff, but this isn't a personal therapy session. So, but like, I saw how I felt unsafe. That anxiety was coming up in me to protect me, right? I think that's the thing that we miss it with our emotions. And like, It's like they're coming up to protect us. The shame, the guilt, the envy, the anger, the sadness, or whatever, like it's coming up to keep us safe.
Mm,
And then but the bigger self can sit there and say, hey, like, I hear you, I see you, thank you, and I'm good. And I'm gonna go do this thing anyway.
yeah.
And that's like my mom called me today and asked, she was like, oh, so like, are you feeling overwhelmed with like baby and all this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, of course. But I'm not, like, it's not stopping me because it's coming up, it's trying to protect me, it's trying to alert me to something, but then it's also like conversation and a befriending and a way of working with it. And I think like then on the other end of it, like I had the conversation with the guy, I told him what I was gonna do, and like, if you gotta fire me, you gotta hire someone else, I understand. And he's like, no, I don't want that to be the case. Like, I'll talk to the owner and we'll figure it out. I don't know how we'll make it work, but we'll make it work. And I'm like, okay. I was able to express my needs at the inconvenience of somebody else, and it was okay. And that's good. Like, that's feedback I need to take and sit in and recognize and like remind. Like, so like on the phone just like talking it out loud, because it's like I need to remind myself like, hey, I did this thing that I was really afraid of, and it was okay. And
Mm.
hopefully in the future, I'm not so anxious about it, about doing those things. But I might be, and it's good reminding to myself that it's okay to do it anyway, and like, yeah. Mm,
And that's courage too, right? I feel
yeah,
like that is the courage muscle that we need to practice with. I love courage. Like I think that it's just one of the sexiest things because it's showing up for ourselves. It's becoming that like fierce mother that we need to be for ourselves, right? And I love that you also did that, with your job, because also now that you're becoming a father, like you have priorities, and it's also a way for you to learn more about yourself. And yes, you love to be kind, you love to be nice, and you love to please, but at the same time, there are priorities here, and it's like confronting us with, like in different phases of our life. Like now, it's like confronting what are your priorities now that you're gonna have a little kid and all of these things. So I think that like focusing on the process, it's like, okay, here I'm learning courage, this is my flavor for now, and this is what I need to kind of like experience this with. But one thing that also really helps me is like, I'm gonna do this act of like courage, like even if it's just stating my needs, and do nothing about it, like just kind of just saying it, because it's so crazy. I don't know if how it went with you, but many times when I need to like confront something that is very uncomfortable, my like initial reaction is I need to justify myself. I don't want to
mm,
fucking justify myself to anybody, like I'm going to give you from my side, I'm going to receive what you need to tell me. Obviously it's always a relationship, but I don't need to justify what I don't feel comfortable justifying, because maybe I'm not even sure. But the thing is that we are responsible for ourselves, right? Like we can take care of ourselves and what we need in this moment.
absolutely. And one thing that helped me with all this is like, adults are capable of being disappointed.
Mm.
Like, it's not my job to make sure no one's disappointed. And a lot of times, funny enough, like, I grew the most from people who disappointed me or told me no, or shut a door on me, or this or that. And not that like everybody's in the, you know that perspective, but also like, I'm not inherently being unkind to somebody else by like stating my needs, because this disappointment, like, that's also an opportunity for them to grow and see how they interact with this and that. And like, also at the other side of that too, and probably even more relatable, is like, I'm someone I love also. And I think that's something that gets really easy to forget, is like, I want to love everyone, I want to be kind to everyone. Well, I'm a one also. Like, so I need to make sure I'm also making time to be kind and loving of myself, because then otherwise I'm not being kind and loving everyone. If I leave myself out of that everyone, then I'm not actually, living that out. And yeah, that comes with, yeah, doing things that are uncomfortable. But yeah, courage is a big one. That was one of my big three, like play enthusiastically, explore courageously, and love unconditionally. Courage is because there's gonna be fear, there's no way around, like life is uncharted. Life is we don't know, like, what's life gonna look like at 50 or feel like tomorrow, like we kind of know. We can trick ourselves into thinking we know, but we don't really know. Like, nobody 4 years ago would have said, hey, we're gonna be, locked in our rooms for 2 years. And we don't know.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like I think that we have to maybe kind of finalize with our favorite flavors of the ice cream. But one thing that I notice how important it is like we can really get intimate with like the things that are like the lessons that are showing up for us. For example, like courage, right? Like I think that when we can put our eye there instead of like the result, instead of the fear, it's that is like really strengthening our muscles. And I feel like that is also the buoy, that is the anchor as well. It's like we are giving full attention to what's showing up, and the way that we're growing up, growing in every moment. And I feel like that is just, for me, that gives me a lot of peace, because the fear and the anxiety, it's so unpleasant, and not in a way that it's just unpleasant as like a growing lesson, but it's like I know there's another way to approach this, right? And I feel like courage is good, but also falling in love with courage, like really making that like the kind of, many times I'm thinking, what kind of person do I want to end up with? Like, who do I want my future partner to be? That, like that feeling of safety, that feeling of whatever it is, I'm going to start doing that for myself. But I need to be very clear on what it is actually that I admire in that, and then fall in love with that. Because if I just fall in love with a person, that's literally falling in love with the ice cream that melts, right? That's not the point. But it's really about falling in love with that which is basically the art of life, the painting of life, falling in love with love. And this is definitely my practice, because it's so easy to fall in love with a desire, right? Like it's a great way to also wrap up with like dancing with desires, right? It's like seeing these desires but not mistaking that desire for like the moon, right? Like finger pointing to the moon. The finger is not the moon. We need to like remember what the moon is, and that is the ice cream cone that never melts, and that is beyond desires.
Right. It's tapping into the essence.
Mm.
It's sitting in that, like, that indescribable flavor, that just isness, and I think the way we do that is finding, or the most accessible way we can do that is to find that essence in ourselves, is to realize and remember that essence in ourselves, and then recognize that essence is also in everybody else, and look past, the outward presenting thing, and feel that essence. And some people, aren't as expressive of that, and they've got it more closed off, and some people are more open, and that's a dance in and of itself. But it's all there, it's like we're all just essence living this human birth, doing our thing,
Yeah.
and dancing with desire in whatever way we know how.
Yeah. And like I got a visual. The last thing that I would like to share is like, when we were kids and we used to like draw ice creams and pretend like we were eating them, or like, like there was just so much play pretend. And that was just as satisfying as an actual ice cream, if we were fully in it, if we were fully in the game. And here, like, I think that one thing that would be super cool is also realizing that when we talk about ice cream, like we're talking about food because this is something that we can consume, but also it's about play with the ice creams that you want, but like draw them, right? Like we don't always need to be focusing on what somebody else can give us, but how about like we start drawing these things? Because I've noticed that for me, like it's really about getting intimate and getting clear with what my desires are. That is my arts. So like drawing these different ice cream flavors or drawing out recipes, that is so much more like satisfactory for me than just like eating it or just making it, because there is something deeper here calling for our attention. And like this is what I'd really like to stay with and savor. Like there is something deeper calling for our attention, which is not like that which fluctuates, that which melts, but it's just really that essence that you're talking about. And we can picture it in whatever way is going to feel good for us, but it's just remembering that we are like not just the shallow, you know, like we have both.
Right. Right. We have depth, you
Yeah.
know, and
And we have
that's
shallowness too.
and
Yeah.
we have shallowness too, right? And it's all okay. It's all part of it, right? The ocean is shallow by the shore and deep as you go out, and it's all ocean, you know, it's all part of it. And you know, like we are these multi-dimensional beings that are capable of all of these different things. And I hope whoever's listening, you know, dances with them and plays with them and you know, yeah, doesn't shy away from it.
Exactly. So we can make our own ice cream sundae, put whatever flavors we want to combine. It doesn't matter. And even if the ice cream cone doesn't even exist while there, we just keep on going back into our essence and we keep on going back to like what feels good. And this is something that feels so good. I love talking with you. I just can't believe how fast time goes when we have our conversations. And this series has been so enlightening for me. And I really hope for all our dinner guests as well. Rob, please, any final words that you would love to share with us?
Um, yeah, do not seek outside yourself. I think, you know, as we learn about other stories, like, and you hear our stories and kind of go on the journey in and of yourself, like learn from them, enjoy them, laugh with them. But like the story of your own unfolding is written exists on pages not yet written in ink that spills solely from within. And we know the way, like we do. And ultimately it's just about having the courage to communicate it, having the courage to trust it, and having the courage to like have compassion for others on our path as well. So yeah.
Yeah. I love that you're saying that coming from a joker, a real joker like yourself, you know, nothing is ever as it seems. And like, let's just take life with a grain of salt. And yeah, let's not look beyond our, like outside ourselves. And oh, thank you so much. I so enjoyed recording this series on Dancing with Desires. Thank you everybody for tuning in and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.